Off you go, ma'am.
Hello and welcome to Street Stories. Sairi, thank you so much for joining us. Sairi, set up Sheroes, you set up Newslink, you set up Fleximoms. You've been a serial entrepreneur, and you've never been afraid of taking risks. Talk about that and talk about what makes you sort of jump in and do things that seem so ahead of the curve, and then fortunately we catch up. Flexi moms, I think, when people didn't even understand the whole idea of work from home and flexible time, and of course now the world knows exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But what an amazing journey it's been, and from a childhood spent, if I remember correctly, in Muzaffarnagar mostly, to
Yeah.
really some of the top echelons of the corporate world now.
Um, so first of all, thank you so much, Kaveri. Uh, I've always admired your work, and so look, I think to be honest, a lot of what I end up doing comes from not overthinking. Like, of course, it's only and a lot of this is in hindsight, uh, and somehow not permission seeking. Like, I think almost everything that I've done, we've done. Like I've ended up doing it first and telling people later, and like Fleximoms happened like that, Newslink happened like that. Like I actually went for a meeting to meet this guy Deepak Kamran at TGIF Friday in Vasant Vihar, and uh, I was just supposed to meet him, and by end of the meeting I told him like I'm in, right? Like I didn't feel the need to consult or like analyze. So it was very intuitive. I think a lot of my own decision making is intuitive, and it's also uh, a lot of it is driven from the heart. Things that are very very like uh, close home. Like Fleximoms was like that. Like one fine afternoon we were sitting in office thinking about this whole thing, and there was a trigger. Actually the trigger was I used to run a small company called Saita, and we used to get a lot of applications from women. We were women heavy team, not by design, but just ended up having more women in the team. And for a team of 20 people, we used to get like 100 applications every day from women. And we were like, why are all these people applying to us? We're not even hiring. But obviously they got to know that we offer flexibility, or you could work from home, and this is like 2005 or so. So clearly, like we had women in our team working out of South Africa and Hong Kong, ex McKinsey consultants and ex really smart women. So somehow these networks got a whiff of it, and they ended up sort of telling their friends. So Fleximoms is really a response to say, hey, look, these are really smart women, and now like they are all they seek is a little bit of flexibility, and that can't be too bad. So it was literally booking a domain and calling a developer in Noida and sort of going from there. So I think a lot of it is super intuitive and experimental. I think none of these started as an idea where one thought like something big is going to happen. But in Hindi they say kuch karke dekhte hain, right? Like let's just try, right? Like now we are setting up Shiro's Money, but it started as a trigger last year when the lockdown happened. And a lot of women were facing job losses, or their husbands lost their jobs. And and it was just like, so I put aside a couple of lakh rupees, and we said, okay, let's see if this money comes back. Like, do we have it in us to build this? So it started with literally like 20 loans given out to see if this money comes back. Like I'd written off that money in my head, but women are great borrowers. It came back, and we took all that learning and went back to build something. So honestly, just having a lot of fun. Like each of these things has been uh, it's been such a learning curve, and such a like you know it's like sports practice. Like if you start showing up on the field every day, like these are very small things you learn, but you learn every day. So
Right.
yeah, and I think the others also, I did have a small corporate career, working in a very structured environment, and I knew I don't belong here. I just need more room to play and more freedom to experiment, and I'm okay falling on my knees and and getting up all again. But I can't sort of live a very sterile life. I need to sort of, especially with technology and building products, right? Like it's so much at our disposal now. I remember uh, I went to JNU, and if you wanted to use the computer, you had to like book a slot in the computer
Right.
science lab,
Yeah.
and because you were a humanities student, you would not get a computer, right? Like you would really get like at a vague time or something, or you like I remember asking a friend to help me set up my first email ID. And then I remember setting up our first server for Newslink, which was like a big deal. It was a server room with chappals outside and an AC for the server,
Yeah. Yeah.
one for us, right? So, and look at us where we are now. Like today, if I have an idea, I can go online by this evening, right? So, I mean, I call myself children of Indian internet. Like we've
Yeah.
literally seen an era evolve, an ecosystem come into place, right? I mean, everybody talks about Silicon Valley. I think there's somewhat of an Indus Valley happening here,
Right.
and yeah, I think, nothing to complain here.
So I think you've talked about falling on your knees and getting up again, and that's really part of the entrepreneurial journey. But that's really what scares people. The idea that okay, you have it all now, and you can lose it all, a year later, and then you have to build yourself back up again. So, what are the things that you would tell anyone who really wants to just give up that hateful corporate job and start something of her own?
Right. So I think a lot of people assume that being entrepreneurial is being financially foolish.
Yeah.
Okay. The truth is, it's actually the opposite.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what. Like I'll share with you a little bit of how I think. So one of the ways I always feel, I grew up in a middle class family. We always had limited income. Like my dad's salary at that point in time, like you always had more needs and less money,
Right.
and all of that, right? And but as a founder, I've always said, look, if my own needs are limited, then I can build anything, right? Like, can I run myself on a level 2 employee salary and keep building, right? Then my risks are damn low, right? I mean, look, I can always get a corporate job. That's a great fallback. Like, let's say nothing works out, one can always go back to earning like a corporate salary.
Right.
But the truth is, the leverage comes from the risk, right? The delta comes from ability to take the risk, right? So for me, risk is actually not saying that, hey, I won't take care of anything. I mean, look, I don't have a fallback. I take care of, like, right from my rent to all the bills to whatever, right? So there's no sort of like cushion that was ever there or whatever. But the truth is, uh, I think staying lean, it's like building a startup. Staying lean is always a good way to be, right? But I think it's also personal, right? I mean, are you a person who seriously enjoys lifestyle? I mean, holidays and yachts and shopping and Dubai and whatever. Then you're that kind of person, and like, good for you if that's what you really enjoy. The truth is, I mean, for me, both holidaying and shopping are really work. Like they really exhaust me. Like, uh, so for me, they're not something that I want to park my money on. So staying lean has always worked in my favor. And then of course, I think a little bit of uh, a little bit of entrepreneurial prudence, I call it. Like, start small. Like everything starts small. No venture becomes a venture on day one. Like
Right.
Fleximon started like that idea. It took it 2 years to actually become something, right? So I mean, the bills were still being paid from another business, right? And same for Shiros, right? Like, I started working on Shiros in 2013. It actually launched in 2014,
Right.
and the first seed funding actually came in 2015, right? So I had 2 years to sort of make sure that things kept going, but we were also not like dying in the process. So there were five of us who sort of managed to build like a little MVP and go online and things like that. and I think that's the hustle that you see a lot in the valley. You see a lot in founders to say, hey, how can I get to a point that will give me leverage? Basically all our work is to get to a point of leverage, right? To
Yeah.
say, hey, look at my product, now I can raise funds on back of it.
Right.
Hey, look at this, or this needs to get to an next point. So it's just being able to literally sort of uh, plan that leverage a little bit, so it's not that uh, actually it's not that rash. In fact, it's a little conservative if you sort of poke it a little and say, like I give you an example. My peers went and bought houses and big cars very early in their lives. I waited a long time because I didn't want to use up my cash. My cash was my backup, right? So it's a small thing, but I guess it like psychologically that, hey, you need runway to sort of last this much.
Right, right. And I think that that's the other thing. When you talked about that leverage, that point of leverage, how does one decide that, okay, this is the moment when I can actually go out and seek funding? I can actually present this to the world, and it's been there, people know about it, but this is the moment where I can actually make something more of it.
Right.
How do you know that time?
Right. Actually, the truth is, if you're building something, and especially now, earlier the world was not so, we were not all, living our lives on Twitter and Clubhouse and all of that. But now we are, right? So there is a concept called building in public. And what that really means is not only you're ideating and sort of sourcing and sharing, you're literally selling your idea every day. So and what you're also doing is you're establishing your credibility along the way to say, hey, I'm here to build, I'm committed to this work, this didn't work. So that sort of transparency sets you free a lot. Of course, I think it's also very scary, but I think a lot of finding this leverage is really um, owning it a little bit. So if I know I'm working on this experiment, can I uh, you don't have to wait for a certain point to take your idea to the world. In fact, as a founder, you are like the chief evangelist, moment you think of it, and from there on it's your job to go and like, shout out from rooftops and do whatever you can so that people know you, right? Like
And you
people.
have to be shameless about it. You can't sort of be this wilting
Yeah, you have to hack
flower.
it. Absolutely, you have to hack it. Look, I'll give you a funny example. So when my first email was made, the guy who was making it or whatever didn't know my second name. He knew Sairi ma'am, so he wrote Sairi Shiros. So that's been my email forever now. Nobody knows my second name, okay? But I read 300 emails in a day. I must have sent, in last 5 6 years, maybe 100,000 emails. 100,000 emails have gone to people personally written by me with Sairi Shiros. That's how people know me.
Yeah, that's
So
what an amazing thing, right?
yeah,
That's
like
called brand building by accident.
yeah, so like if you see my Twitter handle, it actually says Sairi Chahal Shiros, right?
Right.
Like, so I think in some ways, uh, the truth is there's no one playbook, right? Like you have to do whatever business you are in and whatever you can create for yourself. It's also your personality type. You
Right.
have to play by what you're comfortable with and what you enjoy, and because it has to sustain, like if it's not you, it's not going to last.
Right.
So I think and that's the leverage we all are looking for, that hey, let's sort of let's just own it, right? Like if you're going to do this, then we might as well do it all in and sort of, and look and be okay with the possibility of failing, right? It's like, when you go to a sports event, that
Yeah.
somebody will come second and third and fourth, right? So it's all right, right? Like we know that possibility exists. I think we just sometimes we play that scenario too many times in our head before it actually plays out,
Right.
so
Right.
it becomes overwhelming. So yeah, so I think like for example, I don't prepare my talks. I just find they become less meaningful,
Right.
right? Because I'm then sort of trying to make a point and I'm trying to look all smart, and then the opposite happens. So I let it be, right?
Has that happened to you?
So I try and look, I think that's the whole thing of owning it, right? Like the context goes away when I prep it too much. The room I'm in might be in a different zone altogether, right? The energy in the room might be very different, or so I rather sort of uh, be more authentic than, you
Yeah.
know, be like all polished about it.
And Sairi, let's talk a little about Shiro's, because it's just opened up such a world to so many women, not just to talk to each other, but to talk about themselves, to network, to find like-minded people, to find interests, where they can contribute. What are the greatest things you learned from Shiro's?
Right. So I think one is, when you're building products online, you're actually not doing anything new. You're just bringing offline behaviors online.
Right.
So we're a country where women have thrived in women-only groups,
Right.
right? A country that produced Anganwadi workers and Asha workers and self-help groups and kitty parties and mom groups.
Yeah,
And
actually, they're all part of the same thing.
yeah, they're all the same, right? These are safe spaces for women to ask anything, to be
Right.
themselves. All we did was we productized that, right? We created a product and we sort of, created a little bit of, again, leverage around it. The other big insight is uh, women's spaces have been snatched from them. And what I mean by that is, every woman is out there uh, who she already has been hashtagged and labeled. She's ex's wife and ex's mom and ex's sister and daughter and all of that. Women's me space is is hard to find. Like every woman craves it and struggles for it, but those spaces are hard to find. So like we built Shiro's as a woman's me space. It's not about family, it's about you, what you like. You like art, you like selfies, you like travel, whatever you like it's your thing. Third is, everyone wants to get better, right? Like everyone has aspirations. They may be different aspirations, but she has those aspirations, and that's what sort of binds them all together to say, hey, like let's. And then of course I think the other big pillar, so all this forms part of what I call emotional identity. My
Right.
me space, my aspiration, my voice, all of that. And second is financial identity,
Yeah.
right? Like income, entrepreneurship. Like so many women do something but they never call it a business.
Yeah.
So many women want to start something but like there's nobody cheerleading.
Yeah.
Or there's so many women who have a question but they don't know like how to get there. I want to start a baking business, but I don't know which industrial oven to buy,
Right.
right? Or I don't know which packaging to use, or I don't know anything about GST. The truth is, these are all things that are important, but they're so small in their individual context that there's no space for them. So all we're doing is just creating that space, and and of course now like there's a whole ecosystem for women online for Shiro's, right? From being able to look for advice, find peers, income opportunities, get support, and then of course I think the financial roadmap, right? I think both emotional success and financial success is common to every woman. These are universal themes, right? And
Right.
like health becomes very important theme for women. Like women's health is so ignored in this country, right? Like nobody thinks that women have a health issue unless they're dying or unless
Yeah.
something severe has happened.
Exactly.
And so many women's health issues are brushed under the carpet. So I just feel that all we are doing is we are using technology to create a space, and that space itself uh, offers so much of value. Like it's our version of those offline groups, right? Our version of saying, hey, you can come hang out and you can ask anything, and then you can do other things. Like now you can set up a shop on Shiro. So it's a community marketplace. Women are buyers and women are sellers, and things like that. And of course now they can do other things. They can take a loan, they can sign up for a savings account or whatever, right? So they can do a lot more, but the heart of this is a space to hang out.
Right. I mean, when you say it, it seems so simple, and you wonder why no one thought of it before. But that's the key, right? to have that idea at that moment and then to sort of incentivize it. How did that occur to you?
Actually, I think I have to confess, all ideas, like they're like kittens. They grow up really fast. So because we started as a look when we started, uh, the number of women online were just about 10-12 million. Okay, in India, and most of them were women in urban cities. Most of them were, women who were educated, had a corporate sort of connect. And then obviously, we've seen India's internet growth. We're the
Right.
second largest internet population in the world, going to be the largest. Today there are 350 million women who are connected to the internet. Okay, but when we first started, we just started as a space for, so it was a plus one from FlexiMoms. It was
Right.
basically the next thing to, saying, okay, so it was a space for, it was a community for jobs and careers for women, and it was a space to talk about careers and going back to work and flexible work and content around that. And then as the internet changed, we said, hey, now look at all these women coming from Surat and Meghalaya and Bharuch and Ludhiana and Trichy. Now we have to, and they want the same things, but they want a different experience of it, and they want to sort of uh, consume it differently. So we became this network that we are today. So the thesis is the same,
Right.
but the idea has evolved a lot, right? So sort of when there are many points on this, one can say that this has failed or it's failed. Actually, I mean, technically you can say it's failed many times over before it got here, and it can still fail like a couple of times before, like it sort of, goes there. It's like car companies, right? They launch a car model every quarter, right?
Yeah.
Like they launch a new car model because, I mean, at a point there was a time when customers wanted a Maruti, but now customers want an electric vehicle, or customers want snazzy interiors or whatever, right? So that keeps changing.
So talk a little finally about Shiro's money. I mean, what prompted you to launch that? You talked about the pandemic. So what were the lessons there?
Right. So I think because we were building a women's network, I always knew at some point financial services will kick in. I mean, not only we are a country with poor gender metrics and poor gender gap, but we're also a country where women are highly underrepresented in financial products
Right.
industry. Right. So uh, less than 10% of all loans go to women. Right. Even though microfinance is one of the biggest success stories from the country, the absolute numbers are very poor. If you look at bureau data, women are still sort of like a smaller chunk.
Right.
Uh, and what's happening is there are women in corporate, which is a very small number,
Yeah.
but they're covered by Citibanks and
Right.
HDFCs. And then there are women who, let's say, in rural India, who are covered by, let's say, Jandhan or microfinance or local sort of this thing. There is a new kind of woman who's invisible to everyone today, all policymakers, everybody, who is the woman who lives in Trichy and runs a small beauty parlor, the
Hmm.
woman who lives in Rampur and runs a small boutique, the woman who runs a yoga studio online, the woman who's an online influencer, the woman who is a paper artist in Meghalaya, the woman who runs a maybe a small shop in a little taluka somewhere.
Right.
These are all women who are not covered. Like if they want, let's say, a loan, let's say from a SBI or an HDFC bank, it's
Right.
next to impossible.
Yeah. Very difficult.
Yeah, it's I mean, what happens is it brings her confidence down. Bring your family, bring your husband, bring lots of paper, a lot of humiliation,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, and I think anyone, and because women have discovered internet, they also know there are more efficient ways online now. They also know that, hey, like every woman's window has just opened up far more. Like she knows the possibilities are endless. So there is a newfound confidence, entrepreneurial confidence in women in India. So no one will, if you talk to them, they will not say I'm entrepreneur, hai, but that's what they are, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're doing, right? So what are we doing? We're really building two things. We're building again a community for women and their aspirations.
Right.
Aspirations to set up a business, aspiration to grow a business, to send her kid to college, to buy her scooty, buy her laptop,
Right.
anything that enables her to do well in life, right? So these are women who are on their way. Today they don't have enough money to manage, but they do want to make their money enough to manage, right? So a lot of financial conversations about managing money, a lot of Shiro's money conversations about opening access to money via some of these access to capital, access to income opportunities, access to know-how, right? Hey, if I am giving you a loan that helps you buy beauty parlor equipment, can you also connect me to 5 other women who run a beauty parlor so we can have a chat?
Right.
Or can you also tell me who are the 5 best vendors in this country for beauty parlor equipment?
Right.
Right, so a community for that. So technically you can call us a community neobank. Neobank means that we're not technically a bank.
Right.
There is a bank in the back end, and it offers all the products that a bank would offer: loans, savings, investments, insurance, mutual funds. But to a user, it's just a consumer app. It's a community. It's a safe space to, again, go on this journey, right? And especially for this woman I just described, the entrepreneurial aspirational woman. So if I was to sort of personify this, just imagine Sri Devi in English.
Yeah, I was about to say that, the laddu maker.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I mean, she was so invisible to her family, and
Yeah.
just imagine she walking up to a bank officer. I mean,
Right.
that would be so, like, humiliating, right? But imagine her walking into a space where she meets 5 other women who do something similar and
Yeah.
who really appreciate her because they've been there, right? They've been in the same shoes. Or Dolly Auntie from Wiki Donor, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, or Neena Gupta from Badayo, like, like always. So I think India is full of these women. There are almost 200 million women who are like this, right? Like, they're all around us, like in our, in our localities, in our, they all they all do something, but they're sort of invisible. And some of this is not so structured. Like, we all know a woman who sells material,
Yeah.
right? Like, or we all know a woman who will, either bake a cake or put together a certain kind of a meal. But,
Yeah.
like, a bank would never talk to her, essentially. So that's what we're doing with Shiro's money. So it's a, you can call it a digital Mahila bank, you can call it whatever, but yes.
Is it ready to launch, Sairi?
Yes, it's. I mean, it's already live in for a wait list, but
Right.
the actual product will be live in a couple of weeks.
Wow, I can't wait to see this as well. I think it's quite remarkable. When you talk about the invisible entrepreneur, it really does, bring this alive. This image, as you said, of Sri Devi in English, or you know, um, those thousands of women who run tailoring shops at home.
Exactly.
We don't consider them entrepreneurs, but we say, "Acha, wo tailor hai," but
Ah,
darzi hai, but she is an entrepreneur.
yes, and
So
yeah,
yeah,
I think, look, how did Silicon Valley become Silicon Valley?
yeah,
Because it became a community first, right? Like, you could walk into a room and get help. Like, people would refer, people would share information, people would sort of say, hey, let's just sort of share what we know, and let's sort of help each other. Uh, and I think we need to do the same. The good thing is, this is again not new behavior. Look, it exists in models like Mandeshi, it
right,
exists in models like self-help, it exists in models like Seva.
Seva.
Again, what we're doing is productizing. We're saying, can we do it for 10 million women? Can we do it very, very quickly? Can we do it very efficiently for her to never step outside the house? Like, one of the things we realized, like, uh, we're able to give loans to women, literally, she all she has to do is upload her documents. It's all on the phone. We don't
Yeah,
have an offline sort of presence. And she doesn't have to go permission seeking. No
right,
signatures on forms, no asking anyone, no asking for husband's bank accounts. So we're really sort of building it for her, so building so that her level of trust goes up in the system.
right. You talked about this whole idea of Silicon Valley where people could go into each other's rooms and talk to each other, seek help. Does that happen so much in India?
Actually, now there is a pretty robust ecosystem.
Right,
Like one of the reasons I've been able to build Shiros up is because some of our initial investors are all founders.
right,
So Vijay Shekhar from Paytm, Binny from Flipkart, uh, Pankaj from Zomato, Deep Kalra from Make My Trip. So I think founders helping founders is the real crux of any ecosystem.
right.
I mean, Bay Area really cracked it, and I think India is really there now. I mean, uh, it took us time to build our ecosystem. It's only get, hopefully, some of these IPOs will happen this year, and it'll only get like accelerated further because these founders will all turn investors.
Right.
The capital will come back into the ecosystem and get reinvested in more startups and more founders. They It's a small community still. It's still very Bangalore, Delhi in nature, maybe Bombay a little bit, but it's already sort of pretty thriving, and the number of unicorns India is producing now is actually more than China. So we're getting there. I mean, it's when I did Newslink in '99, I didn't even know the term VC, or I didn't even know the term exit or IPO or anything,
Mm.
but uh, and I knew just maybe one or two founders, but I mean, today it's very different. It's far more robust.
Has the pandemic been, what has it taken us 2 years back, 5 years back, the pandemic?
I think the pandemic's really, I feel pandemic's pushing us to learn some lessons. And if we don't learn them, it's not going to go away.
What are the things that you think we need to learn?
I think just, I think the biggest lesson from the pandemic is to focus on sustainability, both sustainable lives and uh, environmental sustainability. I think it's written there on the wall. If you don't hear it, and when I say sustainable life, it also means like a life where health is at the center of it, and your ability to sort of not be on this crazy treadmill all the time, or this uh, idea of mental health, or the idea of that innovation belongs in a certain room, or innovations belongs in a certain I mean, look at how much of democratization has happened thanks to the pandemic, and it will only accelerate from here. I mean, you can't put this genie back in the bottle. And all the companies were saying that we need to go back to offices, and we will only work when people are here 9 to 5. I think those companies are going to get left behind.
Absolutely.
Uh, but overall, I think the focus on health, wellness, environment is really the biggest lesson for all of us from the pandemic. And of course, I think it has pushed. There are a lot of pressure bubbles that have gotten formed. Like I know, with women, uh, domestic violence has gone up, or for women, we know that women's access to workforce is a massive macro issue we are staring at. Um, or or even the for example, children, right? Like children are sort of really facing the brunt of it, whether children who have faced loss of a parent or otherwise. So I do think it's going to leave us scalded a little bit. And until we change how we, like, until we learn this lesson, we're going to be struggling with it a lot more.
Right, absolutely. And I think what you said about a sustainable life and a sustainable environment is really so true. And what you said right at the beginning, to stay lean and to, to stay focused on the business and not really necessarily on the big yacht or the big car or the big house. That's important.
Yeah.
But Sari, that's also a very woman thing, isn't it? Is it a gender thing?
Yeah, I think it's a gender thing. I mean, if it was a guy, he'll say "bada hai to behtar hai," right? Like,
Exactly.
I think for all, like the size of the car and the size of the house and size of everything else sort of matters. And
Exactly.
look, this is also a lesson for us to say, like, look, at the end of the day, the size doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
sorry, but like, we are not as much in control as we think we are.
We
So,
really need to go back to living a more or feminized life in
yeah,
a way.
absolutely. We look. I think we just uh, there is
Living
a,
like our moms, actually.
yeah, exactly, like all through the pandemic, I've seen my mother, like earlier she would make this one big visit to the farmers market every week and buy like her supply of veggies. Through the pandemic, she's been growing her vegetables. Like she just pops out like in her kitchen garden, picks up whatever is available and cooks it. Like it's really the next level, right?
Yeah.
And we all could learn a little bit about that because we are also all struggling with our mental health.
Yeah.
We could all do with a little nice and peace, right? Like we could all do with that.
Sairi Chahal Shiros, thank you so much for joining us and doing this. And I think, your words will resonate with a lot of women. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.